June 13th, 2000, NOFX drops the bomb on the punk rock world known as Pump Up the Volume. Okay, dude, this is 14 songs, 31 and a half minutes. Album title, A+. Cover, A+. Song titles, A+. Production, A+. Length of the record, A+. This is about as perfect a record as you're going to get from a band like NOFX. People are going to fight back on this and say that, no, man, Punk and Drublick or whatever, right? Dude, I think that this is when NOFX took their final form. This is when NOFX became what most people know NOFX as. They perfected their sound. They perfected their production. They really got into, like, how do I say this? There was still the like silly stuff, but like their previous albums all had a heavy dose of like skippable tracks. And it was different for everybody. Everybody liked the tracks they liked, but there was always a good third of the album that we could all kind of collectively agree, like, yeah, I like 2/3 of it. Well, which 2/3 do you like was the question. But when Pump Up the Volume came out, they started dropping records for a good like 10, 12 years. They were just consistently raising the bar. And it was just all the way through should they talk about it in Dinosaurs Will Die? We're going to make records that have more than one good song. Like, I mean, come on, dude. Like, I don't know, man. This is when NOFX really becomes the band that I love. And I love Pumpkin Drublick, and Ribbed is probably my favorite album by them. But, like, if I had to pick an era, this is it, dude. Pump Up the Volume. Was it like Wolves in Wolves Clothing, Coaster? Those are all like those three right there. And War on Errorism. I mean, doggone, bro. They really started becoming NOFX, I think, around this point, which is odd because their most iconic song is probably the Linoleum, and that's like 5-6 years before that.
As in true NOFX form to be unconventional. I agree with most of what you said there. Pump Up the Volume is the kind of album, and it's different for different bands, but like I almost want to give this album the award for, like, at the Grammys, they have a category where it's like best metal performance, which I don't know what the difference is between like best metal performance and best metal song. Like, is there a difference between a performance and a song? But
an extra award they can give some douchey metal guy.
Yeah. With that said, I think this is like the best performance of NOFX in like kind of the way you were saying, in terms of all the things, in terms of album art, in terms of title, in terms of collection of songs, in terms of the way they sound, in terms of their musicianship. All of those things are just like at their absolute peak. Like if you ask me, when do they sound the best? It's this album. Like, when were they musically at their peak as musicians? I would say this album. I'm one of those Punk and Drublick diehards, and I've always had the opinion of this album. It's the except for Punk and Drublick album for me. Like, anytime I ever do a top 10 or like a top NOFX ratings, this is the one that always ends up number 2 for me, behind Pump and Drublick. I always say Dinosaurs Will Die is their best song, if not for Linoleum.
That song is not even close to their best song. What are you talking about? Linoleum's up in the running, but Dinosaurs Will Die is a good song, but man, it ain't that good.
No,
it's just pop. No, man. Like, look, dude, here's the thing. This is when I feel like they turn into NOFX. This is probably one of my more appreciated NOFX albums. It's not my favorite. Punk and Drublick, I don't even know if it makes my top 5. This one is like probably 3 or 4. Like, it's like when they took shape, man. It's like no matter what, it's like. And then when I listened to it again this week, I kind of forgot how seamless it really is. It just kind of flies by. It's very quick. All the songs are pretty short. The last song's a little long, but it's kind of a outro skit type song with a song put in it. So you kind of really can't.
It feels like if there's any point in time where you could just like press the button and want to see NOFX right in front of you playing like it's whatever they were doing when they were making this album. It's however they sound, it's however they feel. And I think this album is the perfect bridge between those two eras of peak. As you were talking, it's kind of got its foot in both sides of the 90s stuff, which is that formation stuff, and then the 2000 stuff, which I do agree with you. It's like that final form from Volume all the way through Coaster. It's literally the 2000s. It's what they were in that time period where they're just they're in like their late 30s to early 40s. They're all like actually good musicians now. Instead of just being all creative musicians, they're actually good musicians. They're tight as a band. They've also very much made it at this point. Like, this is when Fat Records really gets going. So that's another thing too to think about. If you know the history of the band, it's literally the peak in terms of everything after this would be on the slight decline in terms of how everything kind of went for them. This is sort of their peak. And if you track that, if you track right now, the end being, you know, the decline is sort of the, if they were at one place and they ended down here, which I don't think they ended, you know, as a bottomed out band or anything. They ended up with 3 sold out shows. That's, you know, there's a lot of bands that would kill for that to end their career. But if you talk about like the trajectory of the arrow maybe pointing down, it's the peak. This is the peak. It's from here, because even when you go forward with Errorism and Wolves, and I love those albums. Those are the albums I grew up on. Those are still like sort of categorized as the political album or the punk voter album. So it's the Cult of Personality when Mike starts doing interviews again and starts doing drugs and all of that stuff. This is pre kind of all of that, or at least at the start of all of that. So there's just this real, I feel, even though the album is called Pump Up the Volume and it's got a sickly nurse on the cover, I get a real sense of like health of the band, of like just the sort of like the vigor that the band really had at this point, despite the subject matter.
That is pretty interesting.
And the visuals. Yeah.
One thing that I'd like to point out is that shit. Sorry, hold on one second. I hit a button that I didn't mean to hit. All right.
Oh wow, you've turned into you've been hacked or something.
Crap. Is it like that on your end?
Yeah. You probably have, you have a camera on to share with anyone.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. Anyways, what I was gonna say is about 6 months prior to Pump Up the Volume coming out, they dropped The Decline. That is often cited as like their masterpiece, right? Like my opinion on that record doesn't matter at this point. We can all agree that that's like peak ability being shown. It sounded really good as well. The recording and everything, the production of that album was really good. But like, if you come off of something like that and you fumble, it's like that's kind of on you. And so they didn't. They came off of that amazing piece of art and really took advantage of all the momentum and ran straight into Pump Up the Volume. Then they took that and created like a second foundation and then built upon that for their next, I guess, about 10 years. And so you've got a bunch of classic songs. It's interesting that that album has always been really important to me. And I think it's because at the time when it came out, I was young enough to still be impressionable, but I was old enough to be on my own. So I was buying things myself and I didn't have a ton of money. And this is the same thing with that. One of the reasons I don't care for Rancid 2000 so much is because I didn't have a lot of money. So if I bought a record, I needed to have time with that record spent because I didn't have the money to go buy another one. And Pump Up the Volume is an example of a record that I bought and I played it to absolute death, man. I played that record so much, dude. And it's got like really catchy songs, really great lyrics. There's a lot more like poppy. I hate to say that, but there kind of is, man. There's a lot more pop sensibilities in Pump Up the Volume. They learned how to like write a really good hook. Like if you go listen to Linoleum, right? Iconic song, but there's nothing catchy about it. It's just kind of anthemic almost, but it's like kind of just straightforward, straight through.
It famously doesn't have a chorus. Like they didn't write a chorus for it.
Right. But yeah, okay. That's what I'm getting at. And like these songs are like the opposite of that. There's choruses and catchy little sayings and hooks throughout this entire record. And I just think that they really decided to stop bullshitting. Let's just go ahead and make the record we know we can make. And let's see what happens, right? And you know, like you said, Mike started becoming Mike. And I really feel like this is when they started to become who they ultimately are. And, you know, again, I love this. The cover of this album is so good, dude. Like, I love the white on it. It's just so stark. It's like you walk by and you're like, damn, that's bright. I like this. It catches your attention. And I like the updated logo was nice on this album. Wasn't this the first one that had the new logo? Or am I tripping?
I think is it the only one that has this logo, right?
It might be the only one with this logo. You might be right.
I think there's maybe some other EPs that have this with the like that cutout kind of logo, because the Wolves has when they have the Target logo.
Right, that's right.
More common now.
Yeah, this one excuse me. This one's more like the let's see. Is this like the sketch drawing looking one? Yeah. Yeah, this looks like a drawing. Yeah, so this is like a whole different logo, and there's like a couple of singles and I think an EP that have this same logo, but this is a very, man, this album is so badass, dude. Like the cover art is so good. Like I wonder who created this.
I don't know, and I've never really looked into that on this album. And I should have, because it's such an iconic
I'm gonna look it up right now.
album cover. Like for me, we're talking about time periods and stuff. This was the album that they were on when I found them. This wasn't the first album I found them, but this is what they were on. So that was like the NoFX aesthetic as I knew it initially. Which,
Isn't that wild?
and it's funny because it was such like a dark version of like Blink-182 when I think about it. It's like you have the Blink-182 nurse,
Right.
and then you have this
Oh,
nurse.
damn. Yeah. That's a good point. Sorry. Do what?
Yeah, and it should be noted too. This is also their last album on Epitaph.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so all those albums in the 90s are all Epitaph albums. Everything after, and I actually think they did. I want to say I think Brett, maybe they helped him record Liberal Animation, but I don't know if they released that. That might have been off of like an early version of Fat or something like that. But then S&M Airlines, Ribbed, White Trash, Pumpkin Drublick, all of them, Decline, So Long and Thanks for the Shoes. This one, they all came out on Epitaph.
Yeah.
Fat was obviously a thing in the 90s, and then you have in 2003 War on Errorism is the first NoFX album full length on Fat. So
that's pretty cool.
That also probably plays into some of that. It's like it's them having to be able to have someone else do a lot of work for them, probably for the last time in their career. You talk about all the things of professionalism that they were afforded. Not that they didn't get that with Fat, but like it's this, it's the same entity.
Right.
When you start doing it with Fat, where at this point you still kind of got to work for somebody. And it's wild because like you're saying about they had to keep pace, because if you think about all their peers go through this like second life, as we talk about in the 2000s, like Rancid is big again. Bad Religion completely revived. So they had to like keep up with all the bands they were touring with. And I think of like the difference between them and some other people that like disappeared is they didn't have that second wave. Like they didn't have this. Like a lot of the other bands could have just been 1994 bands.
Right.
And some bands were, and they just stayed there. But like NoFX, Rancid, Pennywise, all those bands, even the Offspring, Bad Religion, that were big in 94, they also were really big again in the early 2000s. Not to the same level of mainstream appeal, because younger bands kind of took that mantle, but it was enough to bring everything up, and there was enough of the pie to go around. Like I think of NoFX on this album as like whatever the peak of like not being major label but being really, really big is. It's like we're always talking about whatever like Warped Tour headline, that sort of peak, the peak of their powers that these bands were at this time period. It's nostalgic for it, to be honest.
I would agree with
the bands being these bands being at that level at that time. Like it was right before they were all old men. It's just such a good time.
Oh, dude, I actually wrote something down about that. Okay. Oh, first off, okay, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
My Vagina was way ahead of its time in like content. Listen to that song, and then think about what we're doing 25 years later in the state of the world in like pop culture, and just, I don't know if pop culture is the right word, but like what's accepted in
culture,
I guess. I think that song was kind of making fun of stuff a little bit, right? But Mike's always been into like counterculture. He's been very queer his whole life. So
yeah,
like,
I think it was taken as more broy back in the day. But looking back at it, you clearly see like a pattern that like you see what it
very
was
much
at.
writing on the wall, very much writing on the wall. But I just think it's a way ahead of its time. And then also in the very end of the album, when they're doing that the outro song with the skit in it,
theme from an NoFX song,
yeah, they have the line about being over 30. How do you think they feel listening to that now, knowing that they're pushing 60? Like that's got to be weird, right?
Well, every time I've never seen them play that song live, but every time I've seen footage of it live, they tend to adjust it based on the decade that they're in. No, but it is wild. Like these guys were these sort of punk vets in 2000, and the whole crew was. Everyone we talk about were old bands in 2000. And for them to just end last year, in the way they did, and for all those other bands that we're talking about, all those guys are still around too. Good on them for having that second run, and good on them for still being around. Both of those
100%. It's one thing about this record that people don't think about often, and that I only thought about it once I read it, is that there's no title track on it. The title track got scrapped, and I think it was given to Epitaph for a compilation. And
Mhm.
even the word Valium was misspelled on purpose. They said that it was because of, let's see, the Melvins got sued for using Lysol or something on one of their albums or
Oh, so
booklets
it's
or
like a
something.
it was like a brand name.
And so yeah, so instead of calling it Valium, they called it Valium, spelled all different. And so
Yeah.
it's, I didn't know until I was like, dude, I was probably 30 years old when I realized that it was spelled wrong, because I
Yeah,
thought it was always spelled
I, I thought that's
UUM,
how
but
you
it's
spell
not.
Valium. I guess I've
No,
never had to
it's
spell
IUM.
Valium.
It's VALIUM. I know that from other experiences, but yeah. What do you think about the track listings on this album? What are some of your favorites?
Okay, so the opener is the one that you get on Spotify is a little bit different than the one I've got on vinyl. There's a few different parts of
Okay.
the lyrics, just slightly different. But then two of their iconic songs just back to back. What's the Matter with Parents Today? Just like an old time NoFX humorful song that takes me back also to that time period, because I think I've said this before on this show. When I hear that song, I just think of, and yes, I know I'm in this position now, but I think of like in the year 2000, some guy like 48 years old that is just really happy that some version of the Eagles is getting back together, and him and his boys are all going out for like three too many beers. And like, and I just see like the kid being like the typical NoFX fan of the time, like the college age guy, but like a guy your age, you know what I mean? Just like so weirded out with their, like, that just reminds me of that time period. Now I am that guy. So whatever. And on that same note, a little bit more serious, I talked about it. I love Dinosaurs Will Die. As I said, I think it's my second favorite NoFX song of all time. And I think it very
No
much is
kidding.
the mission statement to whatever this kind of music was at the time. Because to me, what this was, it was alternative rock, but in the truest sense, not in the musical sense of alternative. Like it's exactly for like kids like me. It was something else you could listen to that wasn't
No, it was
that
alternative rock by
stuff.
definition, not
It was an
description.
alternative, yes, and it was still. It was great about the time period is you didn't have to work as hard to get it as you might have had to in like the 80s. So it's that sort of mass distributed kind of thing. I think NoFX again is kind of the peak of that sort of thing. NoFX never goes to a major. I think Dinosaurs Will Die was the perfect sort of mission statement. I think of, as I said, I just think of that era as like Rod Stewart and Ted Nugent on VH1 all the time. Like F those guys. Like it's our version of saying like F disco, I guess. It made so much sense to me. Like people talk about it now that rock still holds on to the old dinosaurs. Well, they've been holding on to those old dinosaurs for a really, really long time. Like that's not a new problem. Thank God It's Monday is a song I always liked from it was, I think it was on an EP before that, but
I love that song.
it's a favorite of mine still on the way to work on a very, very regular
Well,
basis.
the reason I like it so much is because it describes my life. I get to do whatever I want, and it took me a lot of years to get here, man. Thank God it's Monday. But you know, the song's not about going to work. It's about not having to go to work. It's about being a punk rocker and doing kind of whatever you want. Which it's a song I always strived to live like. And now that I get to do that, I literally, it's like my anthem. I wake up on Monday morning, I'm like, yeah, I can do whatever the fuck I want today.
It's
Let's
kind
play
of
some
like
NoFX.
the prequel to the 60% songs that are on
Ha!
Wolves
It kind of
Clothing.
is.
And I always like to think of that one with the EP song "Go to Work Wasted." That I always
Oh
would tie it
shit.
to that. And talk about mixtape songs. That was a mixtape. What I
Now
had.
that's a song about going to work.
You have
Damn.
the ending of the trilogy of Liza and Louise, which is a very, very important song. You talk about hooks and chants and stuff. Bottles to the Ground is nothing but a hook and chant over
Yeah.
and over and over again, and it's absolutely like it is redundant in that it's only the same set of words, but that's another song you see them do live one. I don't know how they know how many times to
Yeah.
say Bottles to the Ground to go in and out, but it's yeah, it just works. Total Bummer is one of their more underrated songs. I feel like, it's this semi-serious song about depression, which just kind of comes across, I think, sometimes as like this incel core kind of song, but there's something I think really passionate about it when he's just like, the go away sunny day kind of part of it. It's got that sad, serious silliness that NoFX can really bring to their music. And then another on that, and this is again, they were the political songs were coming in, which they always had. But like NoFX has a bunch of songs about drugs, and they tend to be silly and frivolous, or they hit on a point. I think Marijuana is one of their really good ones, just in terms of their opinions on legalization and those kind of stuff. And the tone of the song is really weird. Like when you're hearing it, you think it's a whole different vibe what you're kind of expecting. I remember seeing them do that song live one time, and it was weird because it's like there's this little ceremony that goes on at the beginning of it before it hits its peak. And we talked about it when we did our top NOFX songs. I love Theme from a NOFX album. I like everyone getting in it. I love the whole crew getting a moment in it. I like the little
far too long. I
part
can't
of it.
listen to that song. It's too long.
Oh no, it's
too,
all right.
It gets too silly and too long. That is a major skip for me. I'm like, now if I'm making it on a cassette tape and I can just fade in the part that I really like, because there's about a 2-minute section that I do like where all the guitars come in.
Oh, okay. I would say what part of it do you like? I'm just curious because
the part that sounds like a song, not
Yeah.
the fucking silly skit type shit. That's the one I like. That's the part I like. But whatever. I mean, there's plenty of other music to like on this record. So
I skipped Clams Have Feelings too. I think that might be legitimately their funniest song in terms of
so that's
humor.
That's one that I was going to bring up. So basically, most of what you said, I think we're 50-50 on this. Like, the last half of the record, I like it all, but I don't care. Like, we have different songs that we like. Pharmacist's Daughter is a very, 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 very big song to me. I was always into narcotics when I was younger anyways. I've always been into pharmaceuticals and stuff. So it's like, it takes on a different meaning this point in my life. I look at it now as like a kind of a dark humor. But back in the day, it was like an anthem. And then My Vagina, like I said earlier, it's a silly song, but it was way ahead of its time, man. Clams Have Feelings too. Actually, they don't. Some of the best lyric writing, as far as, like you said, not serious lyrics. It's very, very silly.
It's very earnest, though, the way he delivers it, though, is why.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. That's the thing. It makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like, you calling it out because it's true, you know what I'm saying? But What's the Matter with Parents Day is pretty good. Dinosaurs Will Die. Thank God It's Monday. Those are probably the two of my favorite songs. Pharmacist's Daughter and let's see, top 5 songs on here for me will be, Dinosaurs Will Die. Thank God It's Monday. Pharmacist's Daughter. Let's see. Clams Have Feelings, probably. Yeah, probably that one, and then probably Bottles to the Ground. Actually, let's switch out. No, Clams Have Feelings is just a great song. Yeah, okay. So, What's the Matter with Parents Today? Dinosaurs Will Die. Thank God It's Monday. Clams Have Feelings. Oh wait, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whatever, man. The whole record's good. I'm not gonna split hairs on this. The whole record's pretty good. We just the ones that you and I pick as our favorites are a little different, but the whole record's fantastic. I can listen to it even with the last song. I listen to the whole record all the way through.
It's a sillier record than I think of it as. Like, I don't think of it as one of their sillier records, but when you look at it, most of these songs are joke songs on this album. Like, a
lot of them are.
There's a few, I would say Total Bummer, Marijuana, and Dinosaurs, are serious, more serious. But yeah, it's a pretty jokey album. It just has like a very, I think the sound of it is so cool. Like, it doesn't have the reputation in my head as maybe a frivolous album. There's a difference between jokey and frivolous. And I think that's what you're saying, like difference between like, was it Island in the Sand or Island from their earlier albums or so, some of the stuff that is kind of silly that can be funny the first time you hear it, but isn't necessarily the note you want to keep going on. I think there's less like jokes on this album and more just funny songs. And I think that actually makes a difference than them being, as you said, I don't know if skit would be the right word, but some of the songs are like on their other albums are just, there's flat out comedy. Whereas again, even if these are funny, they're still songs. And so, Clams Have Feelings too is a really good song, as funny of a premise as it is.
Well, I mean, listen to the lyrics about it. Talk about, hold on, let me just pull them up because I'm going to botch them if I don't. Let's see. This must be a popular one to look up. Okay, yeah. Birds are dumb because small bird brains, but so are kids and old people. Some birds talk, most others sing. I don't see you eating a talking bird. Pigs smell bad, they roll in poo, but so do kids and the elderly. I don't see you chop off an old man's feet, put them in a mason jar and pickle them. I mean, yeah, dude, like, it's ridiculous. I'm not a vegetarian, but that song's hilarious and accurate. Like, I got 3 kids and I got elderly people in my life too. They're all very similar people. Like, they all behave almost the same way. It's one of the lovely parts about getting old. You can just behave like a child again if you really want to, and you don't have to necessarily be cognitively like, degraded to that point, but you can just fuck off. I know a lot of old dudes that just say wild shit. If you ask them, like, Grants, why are you doing that? I'm 67 years old. Talk however the fuck I want. I'm like, you know what? I feel you, bro.
Someday we'll get there. well,
I started early, dude. I'm at 42, and I'm 43 in a few weeks, though. I'm getting old, man.
Oh wow! But you're both an old 43 and a young 43.
It's weird, isn't it?
You're both the oldest and youngest person I know. So
it's the strangest thing, dude. It's because I've had a long life, but I live like a young person still. It's exactly what you're saying. I'm an old young person, man. It's very strange. Your birthday's in like a week and a half, right? 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. See, your boy remembers.
Wow.
I try to prioritize my friends' birthdays and at least say happy birthday, because you never know who's going to have a day where nobody else really says anything to them. Because that happens to me enough to where I know that it feels nice to have your friend just go, "Hey man, happy birthday," and you're like, "Shit, dude, thanks." That's all it takes. It doesn't have to be something.
Yeah, it's when you're an adult, you don't like for people. You don't like for it to be advertised that it's your birthday. You just
that's the thing. Is I don't want it to be advertised. You're my friend, not you specifically, but like my wife as an example. I expect her to wake up and be like, "Happy birthday, sweetheart," and give me a kiss on the cheek. That's all I need, really. A gift would be nice, but I get a gift whenever I want a gift. We don't need stuff. I can do whatever I want with stuff. Although I did tell my wife the other day, I said, "Hey, are you going to try to get me a birthday present this year?" And she started laughing, and I was like, "All right, here, I sent you something. Here's the link, dude. Order this for me." She's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "It'd be better if you picked it out." I'm like, "Yeah." She's terrible at that stuff. She's amazing at a bazillion things, but getting gifts for me is not one of them.
I'm sure. I was assuming her response is going to be, you know, those trips you've been on this year, that was for your birthday.
Shit, dude, that's for work, which is cool. That's the thing. But no, yeah, I'm going in the week after, the same week of my birthday. I'm going to LA, and then about 2 months later, I'm going to Vegas for punk rock bowling. And I've already got a lot of plans. I saved a bunch of money by getting to know some people and like becoming friends with other people. And dude, it's made it a possibility. Otherwise, I wasn't gonna be able to do this stuff, man.
Yeah, make it feasible.
Okay. As a whole, let's wrap this NOFX talk up, and then I have 2 albums we can talk about next week that I want to bring to your attention and see if you agree with me, or whatever. 2 weeks away. So where do you think, if I had to ask you right now today, where does this rank amongst NOFX albums to you? Just give me like we don't have to make a whole list of everything, but like, where would this rank for you? Top 3, top 5, second half, even like bottom half?
It's top 2 or 3 for me. It's right up there with Punk and Drublick and So Long. It's right there.
See, I don't understand the So Long love. I don't get it, man. That album, I've never liked it. Hold on, let me pull up the track listing. There's got to be some songs on there that I like. Like, I'm not saying this to be like argumentative. I love.
Yeah, and I think it's a very similar album to Value. Like, I think Value and So Long are very much companion.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I look at
dude, this album I just do not like this record.
What's the one they have in '95? Heavy Petting. Like, Heavy Petting does not fit in with
that record's terrible.
Like I think there's a general consensus about all the strength they had in that time period, but there's just this one album that sits there that, like, how the hell did they, the year after Punk and Drublick, I can't believe they put that out. That's amazing.
I think So Long, Thanks for All the Shoes was just the one that I hate the cover. And so I'd never got into it when I was younger. And then now, like, in hindsight, I still just don't care for it. The first track is pretty solid, but there's not a single song after that I look at and go, yeah, I like that song. I don't have any of the other songs on my playlists at all. That's crazy. I need to go back and listen to this one some more and give it another chance.
No, I mean, if you end up, starting a punk rock podcast, maybe we could talk about it for about 30 minutes one day.
Yeah, that dude, it would definitely happen. I put Pump Up the Volume in my top 5. I think it's probably around 4. It might be 3 even, but I think it's probably 4. Let's see. I say Rib's my favorite, but if I go based on what I listen to the most, it's probably Coaster or Wolves, one of those two. But I still put Ribs my number 1 because when I was younger, I used to just thrash skateboarding and listen to that record. I used to fucking love that shit. Let's see, yeah. I'll probably put this one in my top 5.
So, yeah, I think that's probably consensus amongst NOFX. I think I very rarely find someone who likes NOFX's music and doesn't hold this album in pretty high regard. It's
weird, man. It's super weird that I hear people all the time talk about NOFX and they don't like this album. They don't like anything before this album, or they don't like anything past 2000.
Well, there's that dividing line that people have, and they usually say 2000. I'm always curious do they consider this, or if they go like errorism, they just mean the 2000 stuff. I always get curious where they lump where they lump it in, because it could fit into either one.
Right. Well, 2 great albums, man.
Yeah. Fun
2 great
fun
records.
research on these ones. Jeez.
2000 was a good year. I pulled up some stuff that's hitting 20 years just to see what would be like in that list, and right off the bat, 2 just like fell into my lap, dude. We got a lot of stuff to pick from 2005, but 2 that I think we should talk about next week: Alkaline Trio Crimson and Against Me, Searching for a Former Clarity. Because I don't know how big of an Against Me fan you are, but Searching for a Former Clarity is an incredibly polarizing album within that band's career. So, but it's also like a really important record to me. We'll talk about why once we get to that point. So, yeah, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that'll work. I know both of those albums fairly well. So, another fun week of research. Plus, there's a little bit of info in Dan Ozzi's Sellout book. There's a chapter on Against Me that'll be fun to brush up on. And then I never really have to do Alkaline Trio research. I just kind of sort of sit there and reflect on them. But Crimson is a weird album for me, as I'll talk about why I have a weird sort of relationship with an album that a lot of people consider their best, but I have a weird dynamic.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.